Finn.
Where did you dig up that old fossil?
Going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
That's no moon.
We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
Welcome to the Star Wars Nerds Podcast. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
And I'm Kenton Larson. My voice cracked.
You want to do that again?
No, you know what? You know why it cracked?
Sir.
Because we have been talking like maniacs. Should we just let it ride?
Sure.
Sure, let it ride.
I want to welcome any new student listeners that we may have. I did plug our podcast kind of in class. A couple of students identified themselves as Star Wars fans, so they may be listening. And I want to clarify that you do not get course credit for listening to my podcast. So please don't tweet Podlog for this.
They wanted me. They kept saying plug your podcast with Dan. They kept messaging during the class, and I said, nah, I don't think so. And they said, what is this, reverse marketing? And I said, you're not ready yet. I said, you're not ready yet you're not ready for the promotional push.
There you go.
So I did not. They were clearly aware of it, and it's in my course outline, even in the contact information. But I don't. I usually hold off on that until we get to something more. Something that fits it a little more.
I'm trying to establish myself as a podcast expert for my class because I do teach audio production and we are focusing on podcasting this semester. So I do talk about how long we've been podcasting, which has been 9 years now for Media Nerds, 8 years. So we started in 2012. 8 years for Media Nerds, 5 years for Star Wars Nerds for this podcast, which is crazy to me. But we started just before The Force Awakens came out in the fall of 2015 is when we started this podcast. So it's been a great 5 years.
It's unbelievable. It's gone by so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. We are doing Star Wars Nerds this week again, even though we did it last week, because there's new Star Wars news that we want to talk about.
Yeah, and by the way, we didn't get to the sort of the heart of why my voice cracked, because we haven't shut up all week on online.
Right.
Online teaching.
Yeah, it's been
and my voice is raw. Is yours too? My throat is just...
I mean, it's just been nothing but. I mean, but the thing is, it feels like this every year. I mean, regardless of whether or not we are online or in person, we still spend the majority of our day talking, and that just kind of wears on your vocal cords, no matter where you are. Overall, I would say the online classes are going pretty well. I'm happy with students are getting engaged. They're commenting. They're speaking out in class. So it's not quite the same as it would be in person, of course. But I'm happy with what's happened so far.
Yeah, it's not as bad as I imagined it would be, and we've not achieved the level of greatness that we will achieve moving forward. Because this whole week is always about who's here, who's not here, what's going on. How do you download the attendance roster, all of that, and the main challenge is the electronic stuff. And then the stuff that comes with it, like I've got eye strain. This is how marketing works. I've got eye strain from staring at my laptop so much, so I bought eye drops. I got new glasses. I blah 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 blah. And at one class, I actually said I don't have COVID because I'd been talking so much that day I couldn't stop coughing. So I don't have. As far as I know, I don't have any COVID. I don't know why I would have it because I barely left the house.
Exactly.
I don't know how long, but holy.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been busy but fun.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's taxing nonetheless. Physically taxing to an old person like myself.
So, as far as Star Wars news is concerned, a big article by GQ. Do you want to start with that, or should we start something else?
No, let's start with that. That's probably going to be the most of what we have to talk about, I would think.
Yeah, an interview with John Boyega, of course, plays Finn on in all the new Star Wars movies. And it's quite scathing in some respects to the whole Star Wars experience for him. Like he kind of gets pretty, I don't want to say nasty, but he's critical, I would say, of the way that his character was handled in the Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, well, I'd say he is scathing. He's critical of the way the character is handled, but then he also says, and of course we've discussed it. We'll discuss it again today, where we agree with him. Of course, and he raises the issue of how come they knew what to do with the white actors, and I don't know if we had that discussion. I don't think we did.
I honestly wasn't thinking of it in terms of black and white. I just was thinking of it in terms of they just didn't know what to do with Finn, right? Like that was the issue.
Right.
And to me, it didn't have anything to do with the fact that he was black. But of course, it is. Like for him, it is because he is black.
Well, and it raises questions that I think it's worth discussing about sort of how that happens. I mean, this is the summer where we're talking about systemic racism, and I think he makes some really good points. And I think the key point that he makes, and it's a really good one, is don't market the film like this person is going to be one of the main focuses and then push the character to the sidelines.
Yeah.
And he's right. That is what they did.
Yeah, and especially in that first movie, we all thought that he was going to be the Jedi, right? Because he holds the lightsaber in the poster. We see him using the lightsaber in the trailer. And, you know, to be fair, it wasn't a case of the Phantom TIE Fighter that didn't end up in the final movie like in Rogue One. He was handling the lightsaber in the movie, and so that wasn't necessarily a lie, but it was misleading because it did make us think that, and it was all kind of a bait and switch for us, so we wouldn't realize that Rey was the main Jedi character. That was the whole purpose of it, right? Just to make us not suspect. And I feel like that's a very JJ thing to do. He likes the bait and switch. He likes to surprise people or try to surprise people at the end of his movies or TV shows. So I feel like that's right in line with JJ. Now, whether or not it should be, of course, it should not be necessarily with a black character. And what they did with him in later movies absolutely did not do that character justice. They didn't know what to do with him. It kind of wasted him.
Well, they almost knew what to do with him because all of the groundwork is laid in the film. That is the unfortunate. Like, remember that first trailer where he pops up in the desert? That's the first thing you see.
First person we see in the whole thing, right? The idiots are upset about there being a black
people.
Upset about there being a black stormtrooper. First of all, which is ridiculous on its face, but also that one of the characters, you know, the main characters is black. That was also something different, and we know they were playing the diversity card. Heavy in this because they do have like a black character as a main character. They have a white woman as a main character. So they're really trying hard to get away from the all white cast that we had in the first Star Wars trilogy.
I wouldn't call it playing the diversity card. I just say any film has the obligation to show the audience itself within the film. And Star Wars and Star Wars started doing that in The Empire Strikes Back. One of the things that everybody says in the first movie is how white it is. But once again, I think that the first film does set up Finn to be a couple things. To be the boyfriend of Rey, for one, and to be a Jedi Knight for two. It's all there. It's there in the film. And it's not a stretch to say that it's there. I think it's clearly being set up.
And it was something that even they were still hinting at in the third film, in the Rise of Skywalker. There's that thing where I have to tell you something, and we've been told by JJ that, you know, the thing he was going to say that is that he was force sensitive, and that's like, you know, so if that's the case, why not explore that more in the movie? Like, why not actually make that part of the film instead of just having it be a cut line or whatever that was supposed to be?
Yeah, it's like. What's confusing to me, well, okay, maybe not, because part of what this is also the film being handed off to Rian and then coming back to JJ. And I think Rian Johnson in the second movie, and I've said before, I think he made a big mistake with the Finn character, because it's, first of all, it's a pretty weak setup about how they can get off the ship, him and Rose, but nobody else can, and that just seems ridiculous. It seems like, are you telling me you would not jettison General Leia off that ship?
Yeah, no, and not only that, but all the whole thing about the tracking them. You have to take out the lead ship, all that other bullshit. That whole story arc was just poorly thought out.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there may be some benefit to seeing, like, the visuals of the casino planet are fun, and there are some aspects to that scene that are fine, but the end part of it was all for nothing because they get caught, and so they're not successful in their mission. That takes up a good chunk of that movie, and then it kind of ends in this lackluster fight between him and Phasma that kills off Phasma's character in a way that we didn't want to see either, because we wanted to see more from Phasma that we didn't end up. So that whole thing, again, that remains the only bad part, in my opinion, of The Last Jedi. I still like that movie the best of the three, but I think that whole part of it is just ridiculous.
Well, and that's the third thread that they dropped, which is the Phasma, Finn versus Phasma thing that was clearly the groundwork was being laid there for that to be a bigger thing than what it ultimately turned out to be. And then in The Last Jedi, I thought they were going to sacrifice Finn when they were coming straight at the end.
He's like rushing towards that cannon. He's going to sacrifice himself to save everybody else. It would be a noble death, as the Klingons would say.
They hadn't done enough with his character, I think, to justify him doing it, but I thought they were.
I felt it was in line with his character to do so. Like he was the kind of guy that would do that. He's a loyal friend, and then he would absolutely sacrifice himself to save. And I don't think he's thinking about Rose in that moment. He's thinking about Rey and Poe, who are over at and Leia, who are in the base that he's trying to save. And then for Rose to come out of nowhere and all of a sudden kiss him was another kind of shock, right? Because we didn't even, that was not something that we felt as far as a connection between those two, a romantic connection between those two. And then that's gone in the third movie too.
Right. So all these threads have been laid down for that character. And then what they do with Rose in the third movie is more, that's, if anything, that's more evidence that the characters of color are sidelined. And she's sidelined to the extent that she's barely in the film. Like she's got a perfunctory something that she says. And really, if you were gonna stick it to racism, you would, like, what that sort of did is it made it look like all the trolls online that were saying stuff after The Last Jedi
that drove her from Instagram, by the way, that drove her off of Instagram.
That they had a point. That's what it looks like.
It says, it was saying that their racist thoughts are valid, and you're right, and we will back off. And it was backing down and giving in to those people, those people who had racist things to say about that character. Yeah, absolutely. It looked weak as far as the studio is concerned. And in fact, many of the things they did in The Rise of Skywalker to back off and to kind of undo what Rian Johnson did looked weak, in my opinion. Like there was not a cohesive message from that from the whole thing, right?
And we should also point out that there's a whole contingent of people who felt that it was being built up for Poe and Finn to be the romance. That could have been the case. It could have been the case. Now that I'd say that storyline is not rolled out in a way that's as sort of I'd say there's an implication there maybe at best, but the whole jacket here, the jacket looks good on you and all that stuff. Yeah. That could have easily been the beginning of what could have been a same-sex romance for the first time in Star Wars. It could have been.
And there was a recent comment by the director of the New Mutants movie, which came out last week, and I have not heard. I don't think it's doing very well in the theaters.
No, it's panned. It's been panned. Yeah.
But part of that movie is a same-sex romance between two of the main characters. And that's a central part of the story, apparently. I don't know. Like, these are not characters who were gay in the comic book, so I don't know exactly what's going on with that. But it's fine that they did that. But the director of that film said that the way Star Wars handled it was kind of like not really committing to it. They had the two women kiss in celebration after they win, and that was just kind of a throwaway moment. Like, oh, yes, there are gay people in Star Wars, and that's that. That's all there was to it. So it wasn't a central part of the story at all. And you blink and you'll miss it. That was also the issue with that one as well.
He also says that his stylist in the film didn't know what to do with him in terms of hair and makeup and costume. I think. Does he say costume? Do you have the article in front of you?
I'll look it up.
The costume thing came up when he's talking about going to the world premiere of the film, and I'm not sure if that's part of the same discussion as the hair and makeup. It's quite a long article. I mean, I think we're dealing with Star Wars, the opportunity for having really interesting clothing and really defining a character with costume is always there.
He said, in the continued afterglow of that first franchise defibrillating Star Wars film, he continued to notice a stylist he'd hired when he first started doing press, quote, cringing at certain clothes I wanted to go for. The hairdresser who had no experience of working with hair like his, but still, quote, had the guts to pretend and decided that he could no longer grin and bear like a grateful competition winner. During the press of The Force Awakens, I went along with it, and obviously at the time I was genuinely happy to be part of it, but my dad always tells me one thing: don't overpay with respect. You can pay with respect, but sometimes you'll be overpaying and selling yourself short. So yeah, the person didn't know how to do his hair basically properly, and he has since grown out his hair. It's now longer in braids, and he says here, when black men grow out their hair, it's a very powerful thing. Culturally, it stands for something, and that's something that he wanted to do, but they wouldn't let him basically.
Well, it's that. And as I said before, the plot line with him has been dropped, but it was also as a character. Like they just didn't do enough. They didn't, and I agree that he would have been a more interesting character. Like imagine, I like not till the third movie do we start to get the sense that what the Empire was doing was taking people of color, it appears, from their parents and turning and brainwashing them into being stormtroopers.
Is that a coincidence, or is that is what they're getting at? Because we do have the other character who's a former stormtrooper. Now I don't remember what those other people in that group look like that are part of her
That's a
group.
good question.
So I don't know if that's intentional or a coincidence. I think it feels like to me another haphazard way of trying to give Finn some sort of romantic interest, right?
It raises the question. So that could have been an interesting question to answer in the film. It could have been very interesting about how that worked. The film could have said something about that.
And they wouldn't have felt out of character for the Empire to do something, or for the
Right.
First Order to do something like that. They're supposed to be like analogous to Nazis. So that's the same kind of thing Nazis would do.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's as Indiana Jones says, but that's exactly it. There was opportunity there, and I think that's also why people were very angry at the 2-second same-sex kiss right at the end of the film, where it was like you had the opportunity to make that story work in the context of the films, and what you did was you just threw it in because you're like, the fans want this or something. Like it just.
Well, I don't even know if that was it necessarily.
Don't you think?
It was a token. I don't think any. Were there fans calling for that? I don't know. But I'm sure people are calling for that in everything now.
Right.
They want equal representation in everything.
Right.
So maybe it was a response to that, but it was a token response at best. It was not.
Yeah.
It was not fulfilling in any way. The way there's a character in the Aftermath books that we love to make fun of, but to give that series credit, there is a character in those books that is a former Imperial officer who is gay.
Right.
And it's a part of his character, and it's not something they just slide in there. It's an ongoing thing, and they do it pretty well in that first book. Anyway, I haven't read the other books necessarily, but certainly there's a good way and a bad way to do that, and that's a better way to do it than the way they did it in the film. So
yeah. And I also think I don't know that I don't think that anything was intentionally done. I don't think J.J. Abrams set out to go, let's sideline the character of Finn. I'd say I don't think it was on the surface that way. I think it was and when we come back to the idea of what is systemic racism, well, it's the stuff that you don't consider when you're the person directing the film. Like that should have been, and I think on a larger scale, J.J. Abrams, I don't think spent too much time asking himself, what is this film about? What does this film mean? And I think if he would have gone deeper into that, and Star Wars doesn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting to make a point, just like in the prequels when the good guys suddenly become the bad guys, kind of thing, and you sort of see how a democracy makes we were the good guys, suddenly we're the bad guys, and you sort of see how that all plays out. It's done in a way that it's not heavy-handed. It's like good guys versus bad guys, but George Lucas still makes that point. I think if you can fault J.J. Abrams' films for anything, and maybe even Rian Johnson's, it's that I'm not sure we get a clear sense of what do you think this means? What do you think Star Wars means? What do you think the 9 movies meant? And you probably read that thing about Rey looking at the 2 suns. There's a person on Twitter who just ripped that to shreds and basically said it fails because all that does is go, remember when Luke did it? That in terms of what the movie means, what does it mean that she's looking at the two suns? Does it mean anything?
No, it just means that Luke did it.
Right.
And to me, the biggest failure of this trilogy is the inconsistency and the miscommunication or lack of, or blatant, like, just giving people too much power. Like, I do think Rian Johnson was given too much power in that second film. If they didn't want him to do that, they shouldn't have let him do that stuff. And because he took basically things that JJ had made and you know, killed Snoke and changed things completely. And I was okay with it because I thought they would build upon that in the third film, but they didn't. Now, if I were to do it over, I would say that, you know, they should have had, I think they should have explored a romantic relationship between Rey and Finn. I think that would have been more satisfying than kind of shoving them off to the side. And forget about all these extra characters. Rose is fine as a character. I like her as a character. They could have given her a bigger role, and certainly a bigger role in the third film as well. But she doesn't need to be a love interest of Finn. They should have continued that, because I certainly got the feeling at the end of the second movie, that they were trying to tease a romance between Poe and Rey. Didn't you get that feeling?
Yeah.
Especially since he's supposed to be the Han Solo kind of character in the series, and she's kind of the Princess Leia character in the series, right? Like, I really got that strong feeling that they were going to be romantically involved by the time we got to the third movie.
But once again, the movie was so scared, and that's the problem. Someone's got to wrap up the third movie, but all the movies seem sort of afraid to kind of go all in on something. Maybe like almost like they're shying away from it because, if we tip our hat too much, then people will see where we're going. But as a result, you have all these weird kind of, and you know, as I've always said, like the Rey and Han Solo connection. You know, where she's finishing the sentences and he's like, wow, you know how ships work and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, why was that in there? Did we think that maybe she was also they were going to be the twins of Solo and Leia? You
certainly thought that.
That first movie, I still say it, The Force Awakens, I still say that they're dancing around that. I think they are.
They flip it all on its head when they make her like kiss Kylo Ren at the end. Like, come on.
I know.
What was that?
I know. Well, that's the problem. The problem is there's all of these threads that and they're frayed threads. They don't tie together. And that's why any one of these films on its own, you just kind of go, well, that's, you know, good Star Wars entertainment, but all together, that's why it's unsatisfying. I couldn't wait to see the Emperor come back, but it was the way that they did it. Then I was just kind of like, well, why? Like, this should have been they should have laid the ground for this in the second film. Right. Like, if you're gonna kill Snoke, then that's where you lay the ground. And that there's kill him
in the third one, right? Or
right.
Kill him in the second one, and then there's something bigger. But they didn't mention it. Yeah, the whole thing is a bit of a mess, to be honest. And John Boyega certainly was the victim of that, just because they started him in one path. They switched every single movie. It's like they change his direction, and he has to start over as a character, and that just doesn't help. And then again, they also throw these things in, like Poe was a smuggler, and all kinds of other things out of left field. And then they still make it look like when he says, Rey, I have to tell you something, they still make it look like he's still got a thing for Rey, but apparently that's not what it is. But that's again a bunch of false starts, I think, is what this ended up being.
Then tell us what it is. Like, I've never seen filmmaking where it's like we're just gonna hint at everything we can hint at, and then we can just decide later in the third movie what it all means. But even in the third movie, they're still trying to do that, and they're still and it's true when Finn says, there's something I want to tell you, and then he lives, and then we don't get to find out what he wanted to tell her. We had 3 movies, guys.
3 longish movies, by the way. These are all like 2 hours or more. 3
movies to sort this out. And it's still not really sorted out, unfortunately. And I think that's why, as I say, on the surface, they're all enjoyable entertainment, but deep down, there needed to be more work. And I think, and no matter what they say, I don't think in the beginning they had a clear idea where they were going.
I don't think they had a clear idea in the middle. Like,
no, you're right.
Even going through the Rian Johnson one, I don't think they had a clear idea of what they wanted to do, and that is a huge mistake. And I was shocked to find that out, because you would think that, because clearly George Lucas did in both of the trilogies that he made, he had a very clear idea of where everything was going, and that's in the one way in which the prequel trilogy is much better than the sequel trilogy, in that it does have clear kind of connectors throughout. and each film builds on the previous film. So there is that to be said. Oh my God, I'm saying good things about the prequels. I cannot believe I'm saying good things about the prequels, but it's true. It's true. They're more cohesive. They're way more cohesive than these newer movies.
On a surface level, the new trilogy, the latest trilogy, is more entertaining, probably on a movie by movie basis. It's probably more interesting to most people, to a general audience. Whereas the prequels are a tougher watch. They demand more of you, and there's certainly some missteps in them. But that's where the prequels are better than the new movies, I think. Is in the story. The story holds up. If you tell somebody the story of the prequels, it's actually really interesting. The story of the latest sequels are a little bit, it's less interesting. It's just not, they just don't have that clear run through that they of the thing that I don't think they have something they're trying to prove. I think they're just kind of throwing it all out there and going like, what is Star Wars? It's lightsabers, it's a bad guy, it's a hero, and they just push people in those roles. But I actually think, like, if you stop to think about the sequels and what characters don't get what they deserve, like that sort of vanish, it is let me think for a second. It's characters of color. It's Rose, it's Finn, Poe, even to a certain extent. And I think Boyega says something about that in the article. He says they knew what to do with Adam Driver, but they didn't know what to do with what can I think of Poe's name in real life?
Because it's a podcast, we forget these things.
Yeah, we never remember anything.
Yeah.
But so I think he says something about that in the article too. So like it makes you wonder, how come you know what to do with the two white leads?
Yeah.
And what makes them
Oscar
the leads?
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
And I, to be fair, I think that Oscar Isaac is also Hispanic. He's part Hispanic.
He is.
So
yeah.
so there is that as well. But yeah, I agree. And the whole thing is just, it's just a big mess. And we'll see what they're going to do. They can't do anything to fix that now, of course. But it certainly doesn't sound like he's going to be doing any more Star Wars movies based on this.
Well, here's what I think. I think if they were to say, all right, we screwed up, and we're going to make the Finn movie. We're going to do it, and you're going to be the lead. I don't know. I think that could happen. I wouldn't say it won't happen, but he certainly, you can tell he doesn't feel heard. It doesn't seem like. It doesn't, and I mean, who knows if he I think he even says in the article he didn't really express this stuff at the time, but now that it's over, he is.
Yeah.
So maybe that could lead to sort of a feature or to a D+ series, or who knows.
It's interesting. He's now coming up. He's got a new series he's going to be in with called Small Axe. Which I didn't know about before this article came out. So maybe that's the reason he did it, to promote this new series. But it's from Steve McQueen, director of 12 Years a Slave, not the Steve McQueen from, Bullet. And it's set in, it sounds interesting, set in London's West Indian community between the 1960s and 80s, and has Letitia Wright and John Boyega in it. So it does sound like a really good series, and it's going to be on Amazon Plus here in Canada. So I'll definitely check that out.
And by the way, one of the films we talked about before the latest Star Wars sequels was Attack the Block with John Boyega.
Love that movie. Such a good movie.
And in that movie, he's got like this big personality, and when you watch that film, because I remember thinking we're gonna get like this thing happening in Star Wars that's like kind of gritty. It's gonna be cool, and he's gonna be. I thought he'd be speaking in
British accent.
In his British accent, which I actually think would have been the right choice.
They say it didn't work. He says, well, I don't know what he says now, but at the time I remember him saying that it didn't work. But I don't know what that means. Maybe because Ray's British, they just wanted one of them to be British. I don't know.
Are they? I don't know either. I think sometimes American filmmakers get worked up about people understanding British accents and stuff, and I don't.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
They quite often will put subtitles where none are required.
Yeah.
I see that quite a bit. So yeah, that's very true.
That concern, I think, is overstated.
Yeah.
But I would imagine. But that's another part of. He doesn't say anything about it in the article, but that also kind of plays into a similar thing. It's so unfortunate,
It's unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for the movies that they didn't know how to handle this character, and I just think we would have had a much better series overall if they'd really had a strong vision of what was gonna happen with that character, and it would have been the movies better for sure.
Yeah, you could have done so much with that character. And as I always say, like, I always thought that the thing that would make that character work best if he was being tracked by the Empire, if there's something implanted in him where he could not stop being tracked, and then that would also give him the motivation to leave the ship. And the second one,
they put chips in all the clones. Why can't they put chips in all the stormtroopers, right?
Exactly. So the stakes become higher, and it becomes like then he has to seek out Phasma to stop. Like he's got to take a proactive role to stop being tracked. I just think that there's some really easy things they could have done.
Yeah,
and they could have also shown the Empire to be as evil as it's supposed to be, in terms of kidnapping kids and brainwashing them or whatever it is they did to them to make them stormtroopers. Yeah, that alone would have been a very compelling story.
I believe that is also expanded upon within the Aftermath books, and there are references to that as far as like Hux's dad. I think Hux's dad runs the conditioning facility or whatever, something like that. I don't remember the details, but that also, again, all this stuff is expanded upon in books. But that being said, most people don't read the books, so you have to communicate that through the movies.
Yeah.
Otherwise, most people are not going to get it.
Right.
Other piece of news that came out this week. We finally got a release date for The Mandalorian, and you and I clearly were mistaken last week when we said it was coming out at the beginning of October, because it's not. It's coming out at the end of October. October 30th is the release date for the first episode of The Mandalorian. And so, assuming there will be... What?
Season 2.
Season 2. Sorry, yes. What did I say? The first season? Oops.
No, you didn't say first season,
okay.
But just to clarify.
Okay. So that if presuming if there are 10 episodes as there was in the first season, that will take us through till past Christmas, I guess. Like that's like into January if they're going to do it every 2 weeks. They might make maybe there isn't going to be 10 episodes, because usually they try to, like, you know, the Christmas break is still a very real thing, I think, in terms of TV shows, even in streaming services, where nothing really does well Christmas time except for Christmas movies and holiday themed movies. So they try to stay away from that. But who knows? Maybe we'll have we are going to get another holiday special, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So we have The Mandalorian season 2 on the 30th. So given that, when do you think they're going to release a trailer for it?
It's got to be any day.
You think?
It has to be. I mean, there isn't that much time.
We have we just got a new Bond trailer yesterday for the Bond movie, which is coming out in November. So yeah, you'd think that they would be releasing a trailer pretty soon.
It could also be that it is such kind of the tentpole thing, the reason why people get Disney Plus, that they're going to do some kind of splash that we're just not aware of. Like, who knows? They could have something in mind.
When is the NFL season starting?
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Are we going to have stormtroopers on the field again?
Probably only stormtroopers, 6 feet apart.
Oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do this year?
It wouldn't surprise me if they have something like that. Where, you know, make it, especially since it's everybody's favorite Star Wars now, is The Mandalorian. Yeah. So, I guess we'll see what they have up their sleeves. There's the rumor. The internet rumor. Did you see it by any chance? The Mandalorian rumor that was going around about how Disney has a big problem on its hands. Did you see that? Okay.
I did not see that.
So this was making the rounds, and it was like the usual, who the hell is this person, and et cetera, et cetera. But the person, and it was a woman whose name I don't remember, and at this point, maybe I was just seeing her retweeting it, so who knows, but said Disney has a big problem, and it's that The Mandalorian takes a terrible turn partway through the season, and they're desperately trying to change it before it comes out, and as a result, the trailer has to change and everything has to change because of this big problem. And all I could think of is, if they have such a big problem, then why would they announce they're pushing it out on October 30th?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they just delay it? Or would they just say it'll come out November 30th?
Well, there's no reason to announce a release date at all, to be honest. They could keep us waiting until like a week before and just drop it, and I think it would still do well. But yeah, you're right. There's no problem. Otherwise, we'd see a delay there.
Yeah, you would think. So here's the other conspiracy theory. Are you ready?
Yeah.
That Disney released it on the same day that the GQ article came out to bury the GQ article.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yeah. You don't think so?
No, come on. I don't think they have control over that. How are they going to know when a GQ did GQ contact them for a comment? Is that how they knew that the
I don't know.
it was happening?
I don't
funny.
know.
That's funny.
I just had two conspiracies to bounce off you.
Well, I don't buy either of them, so whatever. No, I think it's fine. I think the most the best thing in the Star Wars universe right now is the Mandalorian. So they're not going to mess that up.
There's the cat.
There's a cat. She's been the star of my classes this week.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Big hit with the students.
Excellent.
Can you not do that, please? I'm in the middle of a podcast.
She likes clawing and biting, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's funny because a colleague of mine at CGOB is in a similar situation. Christian O'Mell is a sportscaster there in the afternoons, and he's been doing his sports from home this entire time ever since the pandemic started. And he also has a cat who likes to meow and get in his way. So I've been listening, and during sportscasts, I can hear his cat meowing in the background, trying to get his attention. And he just lets it happen. I guess it's funny, and people like it. So
That's
same thing
great.
as me. Cat's just interrupting.
That's great.
Before we go, I do want to let you know that I purchased the remastered version of the Star Wars Episode 1 Racer game on the Nintendo Switch. It was on sale for like $15. So why not? I'll buy it. And it is somewhat remastered. It's still pretty blocky. I mean, those N64 graphics are not like the best, but it has been smoothed out. And certainly the cut scenes are great. But it's just the gameplay itself is still pretty blocky. And I have to say, this game is not as good as I remember it being.
Oh, no?
I thought it was like way better. It doesn't seem to be challenging at all. I don't know if I've got it sit on an easy level or something, but I'm just beating everybody handily in these. And I'm not even picking the best racer. I'm picking somebody, I can't remember who I picked, but it's not Anakin and it's not Sebulba. I'm picking somebody else, and it's just like, no, it's just, I move ahead of everybody, and I'm in the lead for the entire race. I mean, I'm even lapping people by the end of the race. So it's not a great game in retrospect.
Once you figure out how the boosts work, the rocket boosts. I remember I had that game down at the end too. I only ever played with Anakin's, and at first I found it challenging, but then by the end, even on the hardest level or whatever it was, you could always beat it once you had the most reliable racer and you hit the boosts at the right moment.
And you upgrade your racer as well throughout. So once you have it upgraded all the way. Now, one thing I do like about it, like I think there's some interesting ideas there. Like there is the idea of repairing it while you are racing, which is something he does in the movie.
Yes.
And you can do that. If you get damaged, you can repair your speeder while it's going. But some of these races are so short, there's no point.
No.
And some of them are so long. I'm like, why is this so much longer than the other races? Like, I can't believe.
That city one or whatever?
Yeah, it's like one lap is longer than the entire race on Tatooine on the Bunta Eve Classic or whatever they call it, the Bunta Classic. Like, it's just not. I don't know. It's weird. It's not as good as it was. Fine. It was a bit of a nostalgia playing it, but once I played a couple rounds, I was done. I'm like, this is not as challenging as I remember. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be better if I play 2-player with my kids or something. I should do that and see how it is 2-player. Maybe it's more fun. But yeah, as a single-player racing game, not great.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, are they remastering it for Xbox and PlayStation?
I don't think so.
It
was exclusive to Switch, and they've also done a number of these physical releases on another podcast I produce called it's called Games You Deserve. It's a video game related podcast. We had a group on from a company called Limited Run Games, and Limited Run Games is a company that releases video games in a physical form as collector's editions. And so it was really interesting because these guys get the license for Star Wars games, and they've done it for, the one with the knockoff Han Solo. What's that one? Shadows of the Empire with Dash Rendar. They've done it with a lot of the Star Wars games from the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and N64, including Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. And the guy was talking about his problem as it's great. I'll link to it in the show notes. Not because I'm not promoting it because I'm on the podcast, but it's just because it is Star Wars related and it's very interesting. He says Star Wars, because it's been around so long and it's been so popular, they have basically every single product you can possibly think of. they've licensed the exclusive rights to somebody. And so if you wanted to create, she says, if you wanted to create Star Wars napkins, there's probably somebody out there who has the rights to exclusively make Star Wars napkins. And so when they create these collector's editions, usually what you do is you have the game, you have some nice packaging in a box to put the game in, and then you have some sort of a collectible item. And oftentimes it's a figure, or it's a die-cast vehicle, or it's something like that. They can't do any of that because Hot Wheels has the exclusives for the die-cast vehicles. Mattel or whoever has the, not Mattel, what's the other one? Hasbro or whatever has the figure licensing. So they have to figure out something else. And what they did was they created collectible cartridges. So they recreated the Nintendo cartridge with a special label and design, and kind of did that, and that's the collectible item. And they put it in packaging that looks like the old Kenner figures. So they've done a great job with this, and it's really kind of a neat idea. So they've done it for Episode 1 Racer and a number of other games for the Switch. So it seems like Nintendo has the exclusives for this right now, and maybe PlayStation 4 as well, but not Xbox. Anyway, all that to say that.
Well,
how's Red Dead Redemption going?
I have ordered a controller in the mail.
Can I tell you, Jack started playing that last week,
and
he loves it. He thinks this is great. His controller's working fine.
Well, I'm gonna get one. And by the way, if that one doesn't work, then I don't know what the hell I'm going to do.
I don't know either. It's just like it's funny.
Well, hey, the way I looked at it was, if it turns out this controller doesn't work, then I can just go buy soccer, and now I have two controllers. Won't be a total loss.
Have you seen any Star Wars toys this week? Interesting Star Wars toys?
I've been looking around. I saw what was out? There was definitely they have now that the Baby Yoda Star Wars Black figure is everywhere now. So that's just like, yeah, the Baby Yoda stuff's everywhere. That's not hard to get. But I noticed that there was a wave of, like, Hasbro's repackaged some of the stuff that's come out before. And I saw a couple of those. I think there was a Luke X-Wing pilot and maybe a none, but nothing that I was going to rush out and buy or anything. But it looks like there's still new products showing up.
Are you interested in the new 3,000-piece Lego Star Wars Mos Eisley Cantina set?
I heard about that, and it seems pretty cool. But I need to see it. I'm
not, I don't have great patience for Lego, for building Lego. I would be happy with it on its, like, once it's built, but I'd be frustrated by building it. It does look very, very cool.
Yeah, building all that Lego stuff is like, it's like buying those plastic models when you're a kid and get them.
I never did that either.
Oh, it's so hard. It's impossible. And it's the same with the Legos. I mean, Legos aren't impossible, but it's just time consuming.
And and you have to, like, when I was a kid, Legos or something, you just got a big box of and you made whatever you wanted. This is all about following the instructions and attaching them. It is a model kit, essentially. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I did get Jack a Star Wars Lego thing the other day. It was just a little one. And it was, I told him, I guess I misrepresented it because I thought it was the I've Got the Higher Ground scene from Revenge of the Sith. And in fact, it was from earlier in that scene when they were like, when they're like fighting on the hover things, when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting on the hoverboards or whatever that is, over the lava, right? That was the scene. And so he built it and put it together. And it is kind of cool because you can actually move the platforms and have them recreate the scene. But it is not the I Have the Higher Ground scene, unfortunately. It's just before that happened. So, but anyway, he had fun with it. He put it together and he has it up in his room now. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I only have only 2 Lego figures. Oh no, 3. Yoda, Darth Maul, and I'm not kidding, Jar Jar Binks. Those are the 3 I have.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, Jar Jar Binks is the least desired one, so there'll probably be the least amount out there.
Imagine
one day that'll be worth something.
Imagine the games and the stories I can make up with those 3 minifigures. That will not be a Star Wars series on Disney Plus.
No, let's hope not.
No.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's Star Wars Nerds. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
And I'm Kenton Larson. Don't let the Force hit you on the ass.
That's no move.
Now I am the master.
TK421, you copy? Going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.